Two names. Remember them? Maya and Daniel. Same company, same department, same title, senior account manager. And 11 months ago, on the exact same afternoon, they both got called into their manager's office and told the exact same thing, an 18% raise. Same percentage. Same new salary, down to the dollar. $84,960 a year. 11 months later, Maya has $19,000 sitting in an account she barely thinks about. Daniel has $340, same raise, same paycheck, every 2 weeks, down to the cent. And somehow, 11 months apart, not months in age, in money. If you think this is a story about Maya being smarter, or Daniel being reckless, stay with me, because you're wrong, and by the end of this you'll know exactly why, because you're about to hear the 10 decisions that made the difference, in the order they actually happened. Here's what nobody tells you about a raise. The first 30 days decide almost everything. Daniel's first paycheck with the new number hit his account on a Friday. That Friday night, he did something that felt completely reasonable. He upgraded, new phone plan. A nicer apartment listing he'd been eyeing got a why not instead of a someday. The math in his head was simple. I make more now, so I can spend a little more now. Nobody would call that irrational. It's what almost everyone does. Maya's first paycheck hit the same Friday. She looked at the number, felt exactly the same flicker of excitement Daniel felt. She's not a robot. She wanted to celebrate too. And then she did one specific thing before she let herself feel it as extra money. She opened her banking app and set up an automatic transfer for $637 a month, half of her raise, to move out of checking the day after every payday. Not at the end of the month, not whatever's left, the day after. Before she could see it, touch it, or build a lifestyle around it. That single decision, made in about 90 seconds on a Friday night, is worth pausing on because it's not obvious why it matters so much. So let's actually break down why. Here's a question almost nobody asks honestly. If saving money required willpower every single month, would you actually do it? Be honest, probably not. Not because you're weak, because willpower is a terrible long-term financial strategy. It runs out. It gets tired at the end of a stressful week. It loses almost every time to a bad day and an open shopping app. Maya's raise didn't get saved because she's more disciplined than Daniel. It got saved because she removed discipline from the equation entirely. The money left before she ever felt it as spendable. What was sitting in her checking account after that transfer simply became her new all of it, the number she budgeted around, the same way Daniel budgeted around his full number. This is rule 1, and it's the one everything else in this video builds on. Automate the gap between what you earn and what you keep, on the day the money arrives, not at the end of the month, not when you get around to it. Open your banking app right now while you're watching this. Set up a transfer for the day after your next payday, even 10%. The exact percentage matters less than the fact that it happens without you. Maya's raise, $1,274 a month. Half of it, $637, left before she saw it. 11 months. That's $7,007. And we haven't even gotten to what that money did once it left. 3 weeks after the raise, Daniel's new phone plan bill came in $40 higher than he'd estimated. Not a disaster. Just higher. He shrugged it off. One bill, 1 month, no big deal. Maya, meanwhile, hit a moment that had nothing to do with saving. Her car needed a $310 repair. Out of nowhere, on a Tuesday. Here's the part that matters. For Daniel, that kind of surprise would have meant picking which bill gets delayed. For Maya, it meant transferring $310 out of an account and not thinking about it again by Thursday. Same size shock. Completely different experience of it. That gap between inconvenience and crisis has a name, and it's rule 2. Most financial stress doesn't come from not having enough money. It comes from not having any margin, the space between what comes in and what's required to go out. When your spending requires 95 to 100% of your income just to function, every unexpected expense becomes a small crisis. A $400 repair isn't $400. It's a puzzle. Which bill gets pushed? Which card absorbs it? Which month becomes the tight month? That kind of stress compounds. Stressed people make worse decisions, which creates more stress. Maya's automated saving wasn't really about the $19,000 number. It was about never having to play that puzzle game. Margin is the actual product she was buying with that $637 a month, the absence of panic. If you have less than 3 months of basic expenses saved right now, that's the priority above almost everything else in this video, including investing. Margin first, growth second. Everything else works better once this exists. Block 2, the purchase that split their paths, 11 to 1330, 6 weeks in, they both wanted the same thing, a new laptop. Coincidence, or not, they worked the same job, needed the same tools. Daniel found one for $900, put it on a card, told himself he'd pay it off soon. Reasonable. It's a work tool. Everyone needs one. Maya found the same laptop, same price. But before she bought it, she did something that took about 5 seconds and changed the entire decision. Here's the question that changes almost every purchase decision once you start asking it. Not, what does this cost? But, what will this cost me per use, based on how I actually behave, not how I hope I'll behave? A $300 jacket worn 50 times a year for 5 years costs $1.20 per wear. A $40 jacket worn 3 times before it falls apart costs $13.33 per wear. The expensive jacket, mathematically, was the cheaper decision. But almost nobody calculates it that way, because the price tag hijacks the whole conversation before the math even starts. This cuts both ways. That espresso machine sitting in the corner that costs $650 and has been used 4 times in 8 months. That's $162.50 a cup. You could have walked into a cafe for less than that, for years, with zero cleanup. Maya's laptop math, she'd use it every workday, realistically, 230 days a year, for at least 4 years. That's under $1 a use. Worth it instantly, no guilt. Try this on your own next purchase over $50. Divide the price by how many times you'll realistically use it, not aspirationally, realistically, in the next 12 months. If the per-use number embarrasses you, that's your answer. Here's the uncomfortable truth about months 4 through 7 of Maya and Daniel's story. Almost nothing dramatic happened. No big win for Maya. No big disaster for Daniel. Just paychecks landing, bills going out, ordinary weeks. That's exactly the point, and exactly why most people miss what's actually going on. Daniel's gap wasn't caused by one bad decision. You could search his bank statements for a single moment that explains it, and you wouldn't find one. What you'd find instead is a dozen individually reasonable purchases that quietly stacked into a life that consumed his entire raise. Maya's $19,000 wasn't built by one brilliant move either. It was built by the same boring transfer happening on the same boring day, month after month, while she made a handful of specific decisions we're about to walk through. Decisions that once you understand them, you'll start applying to everything you buy. There's an almost gravitational pull that happens when income rises. Spending rises with it, sometimes faster. A raise from $60,000 to $75,000 doesn't just buy breathing room. For most people, it buys a bigger apartment, a nicer car, a new version of normal that quietly requires the entire raise just to maintain. Daniel didn't decide to spend his whole raise. He never made that decision at all. That's the point. Without a rule in place, the raise defaulted into his lifestyle, dollar by dollar, decision by decision, none of them feeling like a choice. Maya's rule: half of any raise upgrades her life immediately, because depriving yourself completely backfires, always, eventually. The other half moves before she can touch it. Run that forward 15 years, and someone who banks half of every raise ends up with a six-figure head start over someone on the identical salary trajectory who let their lifestyle rise in lockstep. Same career, same income path. Two entirely different net worths, purely because of what happened to the raises. Next raise you get, before you change a single spending habit, redirect half into an automatic transfer immediately. Live exactly as you were living for 30 days. Then decide, deliberately, what the rest is for. 9 weeks in, Daniel's spare room had become something neither of them talked about out loud: storage. A treadmill that had become a clothes rack. Boxes from 3 different online orders he half remembered making. Kitchen gear he'd bought during a 2-week cooking phase in February. Maya's spare room stayed almost empty. Not because she bought fewer interesting things. She didn't. It stayed empty because of one habit that sounds almost too simple to matter. For every new non-essential item that enters Maya's home, clothing, electronics, kitchen gear, one comparable item leaves. Sold, donated, thrown out. No exceptions. This does 2 things at once. First, it physically caps the slow accumulation of stuff that fills closets and spare rooms. Stuff that's quietly costing money in a way almost nobody calculates. Storage. That treadmill turned clothes rack takes up roughly 20 square feet of Daniel's apartment. Depending on where you live, space costs $25 to $45 per square foot a year once you factor in rent. That free hand-me-down treadmill might be quietly costing $700 to $900 a year just to store. Second, and this is the part that actually changes behavior, the rule forces a moment of friction before every purchase. Am I willing to give something up for this? That tiny bit of friction is often enough to reveal whether you actually want the item or just want the feeling of buying something. Pick one category this week: clothes, kitchen gadgets, electronics. Apply 1 in 1 out for 30 days. You'll be surprised how much it changes what you're even willing to buy in the first place. Month 5. Daniel texted Maya a photo, a friend's new car, some brag about a weekend trip. Feeling behind LOL, he wrote. Here's what he didn't know. The friend in that photo had $40,000 in credit card debt behind that smile. Maya knew, because she'd heard it from someone else months earlier. Daniel didn't know, because nobody posts the debt, only the resort. A huge amount of unnecessary spending exists purely because of what other people appear to have. Social media made this worse than at any point in history. You're not comparing yourself to a neighbor anymore. You're comparing yourself to a curated highlight reel from thousands of people, many of whom are themselves in debt to maintain the appearance you're envying. Maya made a deliberate decision to stop letting other people's visible spending set her bar, not by judging anyone, just by recognizing that someone's external life is a genuinely poor predictor of their actual financial health. The person posting from the resort might have $40,000 in debt. The person driving the 10-year-old car might have a $300,000 net worth. The only comparison that actually matters is between your spending today and your own goals for the future. Everyone else's highlight reel is irrelevant data, every single time. Month 6. Daniel saw a jacket online at 11 p.m., scrolling in bed. Bought it in under 2 minutes. It arrived 4 days later, got worn twice, and now lives in the closet with the tag still half attached to 2 other things exactly like it. Maya saw something she wanted that same week too. She's not immune to impulse, nobody is. But instead of the cart, it went somewhere else first. This is the rule that changes the most money for the least effort, and it's deceptively simple. Anything over a threshold that stings a little, $75 or $100, works for most incomes, goes on a list instead of in the cart. Not canceled, not forbidden. Delayed 30 days. Here's what actually happens when you do this. Somewhere around 60 to 70% of what lands on that list, you'll look at again in 30 days and feel nothing. The desire evaporates because it was never really about the object. It was about a feeling in a specific moment, usually boredom, stress, or a bad scroll. The remaining 30 to 40%. You still want it, and now you get to buy it completely guilt-free because you've proven to yourself it wasn't impulse. This one rule, by itself, can cut discretionary spending by a quarter or more, not through deprivation, through filtering out purchases that were never really yours to begin with. They belong to a 30-second mood, not to you. Open your Notes app right now. Call it 30-day list. The next non-essential thing you want, it doesn't go in a cart. It goes on that list with today's date next to it. Month 7. Daniel's car needed new brakes. $480. He'd budgeted for the loan payment every month like clockwork. He had not budgeted for this, or the insurance renewal that jumped $60 the same month, or the registration fee that always seems to come out of nowhere, despite arriving on the same date every single year. Maya's car needed nothing that month. But the habit she'd built months earlier meant that if it had, the money already existed for it, because of a rule she'd applied back when she first considered buying a car at all. The first cost is obvious, the number on the receipt or the loan. The second cost is the one almost nobody calculates, and it's often larger than the first. Storage, maintenance, insurance, mental energy, opportunity cost. A car isn't just the loan payment. It's insurance, registration, the inevitable repairs, gas, and depreciation eating away in the background whether you drive it or not. People budget for the payment and then act surprised when the true cost of ownership turns out to be 40 to 50% higher than the payment alone. Before your next major purchase, write down the obvious cost. Then force yourself to estimate the second cost. If it changes your answer, that's information the price tag was never going to give you on its own. Here's what would surprise Daniel if he saw Maya's bank statement. She spends money on things that don't matter, on purpose, every single month. A concert, a nice dinner, something completely impractical she just wanted. This is the part almost nobody expects, and it's the reason everything above actually lasted 11 months instead of collapsing in month 2. None of the rules before this one work if they feel like permanent deprivation. That always backfires eventually, usually in one large, regret-soaked binge that undoes months of progress in a weekend. Maya budgets a specific, guilt-free amount every month for pure enjoyment. No justification required, no per-use math, no 30-day wait. It's small relative to her income, but it's real, and it's spent without a single ounce of guilt, because it was planned for in advance. This is the difference between restriction and intention. Restriction always breaks, eventually, for everyone. Intention, with a built-in permission slip, lasts for decades, which is exactly how long this actually needs to work. 11 months. Same salary, same raise, down to the dollar. $19,000 versus $340. Go back to the beginning of this video. 2 people, same paycheck. The only difference between Maya and Daniel was never luck, and it was never income. It was a set of small, repeatable decisions compounding quietly, every single month, into 2 completely different futures. Here's Rule 10, the one that contains all the others. Stop asking, can I afford this? Start asking, is this actually worth what it really cost me? Not the price tag. The real cost, per use, in storage, in what it does to your margin, in whether you'd still want it if nobody ever saw you with it. You don't need Maya's salary to start closing this gap. You need her question. Ask before every dollar leaves your hands, starting with the next one you're about to spend. If this changed how you see your own spending, subscribe. I break down exactly this kind of financial psychology every week.